I've worked for the Ontario Pork Industry Council. It's a not-for-profit organization, and it has a volunteer board of directors. And as such, the primary goal is to improve the sustainability and the viability of the Ontario industry. And then OSHAB is the Ontario Swine Health Advisory Board, and it was developed in 2006. And the project that I'll talk about is being directed by OSHAB, and it was formed in 2006 to address major swine issues, disease issues, one of which, of course, is PRRS. So with that background, I'll go ahead through the project. And this just goes, it's a busy slide, but basically it shows the OSHAB, the initiatives over the last 3.5 years, the background that's been established in terms of the tools that have been developed, and currently related to the OSHAB and the Animal Health Lab at the University of Guelph had a project where they established a disease surveillance centralized database. And currently within that database we have 561 sequences, and we also have the ability when there's a new PRRS isolate, it's then when all the confidentiality forms have been signed, it's then looked at in terms of percent similarity as far as sequences homology to the PRRS viruses that are currently in the database. So right now we've generated approximately 119 homology reports, and from that 83 matched and 33 did not match. And to match, they have to be greater than or equal than 98% homology. And so that gives you an example of one of the tools that we're using. Also, there's a benchmarking that's done twice a year looking at prevalence and new PRRS breaks, going through different toolkits. There's position statements and related to biosecurity protocols, ADRAB, and then also looking at intervention. And there was a small study done looking at 3 commonly used PRRS intervention studies and looking at the cost benefit of that. So the project goals of our project in Ontario is we do want to implement a regional PRRS. We're calling it an elimination pilot project, and would like to advance the Ontario pork industry and disease control biosecurity. Our third project goal is to assess the applicability of the U.S. PRRS elimination approaches, and also to add, if we can, to those elimination strategies for our particular region. We've been fortunate in that we do have various fund partners, and we have OMAC, which is the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. It's a government agency, and OSHAB, Ontario Swine Health Advisory Board, the Ontario Pork, which is the marketing arm in Ontario, the Animal Health Strategic Initiative, that's part of the Animal Health Lab at the University of Guelph, and total cash expenditures, we have a total of $250,000, and we have various people that do in-kind contributions from the industry. So it is a 2-year project, and we're working with approximately $207,000. So in terms of the project outline, what I'm going to go through are the 12 different steps. Some of them we're doing concurrently, and then I'll talk about the location that we're looking at. So currently we're doing the feasibility study, and we are looking at the location options. We started with 4 specific locations that were recommended to us by practitioners in Ontario, and we're now down to, we actually combined 2 of them, so we're now down to 2 locations that we're looking at. And through that, we're looking at producer and service industry leadership. So we went through and we put down what we called area key criteria that we wanted to see within these specific locations. And you've heard a lot of this mentioned in different ways this afternoon. But we were looking for an area that had moderate pig density, that had motivated producers and service providers. And we want champions in the area that could either be the producers and or the service providers. And we're looking physical borders, and that could be something like a highway or a stance of trees, lakes, or just reduced density on the perimeter. The other thing that would be optimal had net pig flow out of the area. We also would like limited pig transportation through the control zone or border crossing zones. And we wanted to look at consideration of herd size and the dynamics. So we would like a region where it was predominantly site 1, so breeding herds, and we want to avoid regions with large finishing sites. There's a site in Ontario that's 16,000 under one roof on the site, and we would not to start there. So the second thing we're looking at, and again, this goes through with the feasibility study, we're in the process of looking at this, is the confidentiality issue, the producer release form. And within that particular form, we're going to address the issues of the diagnostic samples that can be submitted from farm, that the producer agrees that we can do blood testing and necessary follow-up with further diagnostics. We want them to understand that the herd PRRS status and the clinical and production information will be shared, and that will be outlined in the confidentiality or the consent form. And we also want to get consent to use from Ontario Pork, because they're doing the traceability, to release the farm's premises ID. Currently, if the farm is a CQA validated, they will have a premises ID. So the third thing is educating producers and service providers to develop buy-in. And actually, steps 1, 2, and 3 are ongoing. We're doing that pretty much at the same time. Then once that's done, we're going to develop protocol for the enhanced biosecurity for both on-farm and biosecurity and the service providers. And to do that, we're going to utilize some of our toolkits that we've developed from OSHAP and position statements, as well as some of the ASV materials. And then we'll move on to the initial assessment of the PRRS status of the farms in the target region, doing a diagnostic survey. We want to use the PADRAB, and we're going to use that to design the PRRS control strategy. And there has been an elimination toolkit that was developed in 2007, and we're currently in the process of updating that. And again, using the ASV materials. We'll develop on-farm plans and then go forward to implement a PRRS control strategy for the region. And we also currently are looking at mapping tools, assessment, and development, what would be important in terms of mapping for this project, but we do have another project looking at disease surveillance, which will look at more than just mapping other diseases. So we're speaking to 2 or 3 different people to look at the sustainability of a mapping project. And then the portable kitchen table meetings will be ongoing. That's part of the educational process. And we'll continue to monitor the PRRS status and ongoing report to the region and the industry. We have an annual, we call it Big Bug Day, in December every year, and that's where we present the information from our various projects. So currently, these are the counties and districts of Ontario, and the 2 red circles, see right here, are the 2 areas that we are currently looking at in terms of deciding which area we're going to select. And so the first region I'll talk about is what I call the Dufferin Region. And to give you an idea, on the bottom, it goes from Arthur to Orangevale. So what does that mean? If you know where Toronto is, this area is probably an hour and a quarter northwest of Toronto. And so if you look on Highway 10 that runs to the right, we have the city through there. In terms of border, there's a marsh area. And on the right-hand side in through here, that's pretty much the edge of Pig World at that point. We are following some of the County Road 14 up through here. And this area is approximately 600 square miles. Second region is the Niagara Peninsula, and it's going from Hamilton all the way down to Port Dover. So we're following, at this point, number 6. When you get down around this area here, on the border, you have some of Hamilton extending down through here. It's still called the City of Hamilton up here, actually. And then we get into a large Six Nations Reserve and the First Credit Reserve, and then back into countryside down through here. This represents approximately 1,400 square miles, so it's a large area. So what we've done so far is we've held 2 regions in trying to determine which would be the best region to select. We had a meeting in the Dufferin-Dunlop area on May the 17th, and then another meeting was held on May the 26th in the Niagara Peninsula. And so from the first region, we had a total of 37 attendees. So we had producers, veterinarians, and we have the same veterinarians participating in both regions, 2 people from OSHAP, and then a very large turnout from feed. A number of feed mills were represented, and also service personnel as well. And then the Niagara Peninsula was very similar in terms of producers, veterinarians, with feed, transport, and breeding stock companies represented. So what we did was we went through and we looked at each of those regions and tried to put it on a scorecard, looking at one being good and one being poor and 5 being good. Local leadership in terms of vets, producers, industry, are they motivated, are they not motivated? And looking at the pigs moving into the area as well as the borders. And you can see that from both of the regions, there you could go up and down. You know, one person would say 3, or another person would say 4, but they're both getting the same score. So they're almost in a dead heat at this point. We're very fortunate in that we have very motivated producers, and the feed industry is extremely strong and very motivated veterinarians as well participating in both these regions. So you go to one meeting and people are there asking questions, and they didn't seem to have a lot of questions concerning confidentiality, but they were very interested in participating, and they showed up even though some people were still planting, so that's always good. So this is where we are now. As of the 28th, we'd hoped we had a board of directors meeting for OSHAB, and we hoped to be able to make the final choice. But at this point, they're still too close. So I've been tasked with around the 18th of June, we want to gather more information on both the areas. So what we're doing is we're going back to what I'm looking at, area champions, the producers, the feed mills, and the veterinarians, and getting information on names and locations. So where are they, their fire numbers, and what's the type of operation, so we know the number of sows, or they ferret a wean, that sort of thing. And then I've also looked at the feed company as well as the veterinarians to cross-reference that and try to get an estimation in the area if they're interested in participating. And then one of the most important things is determining the incoming pig flow and the status. So where are they coming from? Because as it was mentioned today, this can change. And one of the people that has contract barns actually is a sow barn, contract barns in both areas, and he attended the first meeting. So that's a good sign. He was this producer was a bit of an unknown. So in terms of timelines, by the end of June, we're hoping to have the study completed so that we've selected the area and that we've been able to define what we want for the consent release form and get that started. And we've already had our first industry meeting. And then by the 30th, we want them to be engaged. We'll have other meetings. We'll know who's sort of with us and who's not. And the farms will be mapped, and we'll have developed a sampling and diagnostic protocol because we'll know the sizes, etc. And by the end of December, we hope to have our initial diagnostic survey completed, and then the PER status mapped, and the risk assessment done on some area farms, and then the farm plans for control elimination developed, and the area industry meetings will be held as mentioned in December.